cloud. Okay, we are now recording session number 3, which is for portraits. We're talking about how to make minor or major adjustments to someone's face within a photograph. Okay, so we will start in Photoshop Elements. So I'm going to go to share screen, and we're going to start with Photoshop Elements. All right. I have chosen to use a photo of myself because I would probably be least offended by what I'm about to do to all of my photos. I've adjusted this photo to represent closed eyes or nearly closed eyes. What happens if you have a photo of somebody and their eyes are closed? What can you do? Well, within Photoshop Elements, if you go up to the Enhance button and you click on it, one of the choices down towards the bottom is Open Closed Eyes. And when I click on that, it's going to find my face. It doesn't always find your face. If your face is very small in the photo, sometimes this particular feature won't work. But if it's obvious that it's a clear face, then it finds it pretty easily. And when you first open it up, it highlights your face, and then it gives you some choices as to faces that have eyes in them. And if you click on any of these, let's click on this one, it replaces the eyes with the eyes that I selected. If I select this guy's eyes, it does that. Now, obviously, these are just sample eyes, and none of them are going to match your eyes. Can you match your eyes? If you have any other photo that has your eyes in it, the answer is yes, you can. All right? If you want to find a photo of yours, you click on Computer, and you go to the file that has your eyes in it. In this particular case, I am going to choose a completely different photo with a completely different aspect ratio where I am much further back. My head in this photo isn't anywhere near as large as this head, but I'm going to choose that photo. And it found my daughter's head in that photo and my head in that photo. Does the app care that my head in that photo was much smaller than my face in the main photo? The answer is no. If I click on my face, it puts my eyes from that photo into this photo, which I think is a damn near miracle. The big problem with this is that you need to find a photo not only of yourself. By the way, you notice my head was even tilted the wrong way, but it made those adjustments and put it in this way. The tone of your face, the tone around your eyes, has to be a good match to the main photo that you're trying to fix. So if it isn't, you need to go back to this photo and then make some adjustments in your elements adjustments so that the skin is roughly the same, so that when it pastes it in here, it doesn't look like a raccoon or it doesn't look like somebody just punched your lights out. Now, if you have another photo that you took at the same time that is virtually identical to this photo, but there were other things that were wrong with it, which is why you didn't want to use the photo. Let's say you were talking at the time, so your mouth was open, so you didn't want to use that photo. Then that's ideal. If I select another photo that was taken at the same time, and I click on that, then the eyes are going to be perfect. Any questions about this tool? It's pretty straightforward. It's useful only a small amount of the time, but when you need it, it can be critical. I have a friend who, for whatever reason, always flinches when the camera snaps his picture. And I would say 80% of the photos that I have of this individual, his eyes are closed. I have a file where his eyes are open, and every time I take a photo of his, I fix his eyes. So it does come in handy, but it's an unusual case. All right. If there are no questions, then I'll move on to the second. Let me close this one. I'm going to open just my normal photo. Okay. What if you want to adjust other things? What if you want to adjust, and by adjust, we're talking about spatial adjustment. If you want to adjust the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the head, the chin, there's just something about the photo that doesn't look right, or you want to make an adjustment in order to make it look better. Again, we go up to Enhance, and this time below Open Closed Eyes is Adjust Facial Features. And if I click on that, I get, all right, let me move that down so I can see my own tools. I get a series of adjustments. I can adjust all sorts of things about my mouth, my eyes, my nose, or my face in general. For instance, if I want to smile a little bit more, I can change the smile. Adobe, a while back, bought a company called Liquid something. I forget what it is. But it basically liquefies the photo so that you can move things around so that it looks watery. It looks like clay. I can change the height of my mouth. I can change the width of my mouth. I can change how thick the upper lip is, how thick the lower lip is. I can go to eyes, and I can widen my eyes. I can make my eyes bigger in general. I can change the width of my eyes. I can change the tilt of my eyes, and I can change the distance that they are apart. On my nose, I can change the height of the nose. I can change the width of the nose. And finally, on face, I can change the entire width of the face. I can change how high the forehead is, the shape of my jawbone, and the height the height of my chin. And that's what Adjust Facial Features can do. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Is this Elements or is this ON1?
This is all in Elements.
Oh, I thought we were doing ON1.
I was doing facial features in Elements and ON1.
And ON1.
And ON1. After there are no more questions on these two tools, then I am going to jump into ON1 and show you how to adjust facial features in ON1 that are different than these two tools. I didn't want to bypass these two tools because I thought they had some unique properties that basically I haven't found anywhere else. And you already have this tool in Elements if you have it on your machine, and we have it in the computer room. And so I thought you at least ought to be aware of capabilities of those two tools.
Okay, it's very cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Jay.
Yes.
I don't see the tools on the screen.
You don't see the tools on the right-hand side?
No.
Okay, well.
I think everybody's face is there.
I see. Well, if you move your face, the tools aren't below it?
You can minimize the right side, just is at the top of the boxes. You can, there's a minimize button and you can bring them all down.
minimize up there, Mita.
Minimize. Oh, yeah, I see it.
Oh.
Got it.
the
Okay,
eyes,
thank
the
you.
nose, the
Do you see
lips.
the toolbar now?
Yeah, I
Yes.
see it now.
All right, so here was all the lip adjustments, the eyes, the nose, and the
Okay.
face.
Okay, great.
Okay, great. Leave the faces wherever you just drag them to, because it'll be easier for you to see all of the tools in ON1 as well.
Fantastic.
Okay, any other questions? All right, in that case, I'm going to stop sharing this. Usually what I would do is if I had made any changes, I would then go to filter and click on ON1, and then it would jump this photo with whatever state it's in over to ON1. But what I found last week or the week before was that if I'm sharing elements, that when I jump over to ON1, you still only see elements. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and then I'm going to open elements. I'm going to open ON1 and continue from there. So bear with me 1 second while I stop sharing this. And we're back to everyone. Now I'm going to share screen and go to ON1 photo raw. Hopefully everyone now sees ON1. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, I am going to open up one of these 2 photos, 3 photos. There we go. And so now we're going to work on my face in ON1. The first thing we're going to do is we've talked about the develop module, the effects module, and the local module. We haven't touched on the portrait module. That's what we're going to do today. If I click on portrait, ON1 is going to search for faces in the photo. And it's going to find my face. You can see here's my face. It found my face. Sometimes ON1 can't find your face. But if it can't find your face, if you click on this little picture of the person plus, you can actually draw a box around the face that it couldn't find, and now it found that face as well, and you can adjust that face as well. Each face is independent of every other face. So if you have 3 faces highlighted over here, each adjustment that we're going to make in portrait is specific to whichever face has the orange box around it. So don't forget that if you use the yellow, let's say there were multiple faces here, and I moved around on here to get to somebody else's face, just because you are looking at that person's face doesn't mean that you are adjusting that person's face. You need to select that person's face in order for the portrait adjustments to be specific to that person's face. This is an error that I made early on a number of times. I said, I am now looking at person X's face and I'm making adjustments within portrait. Why am I not seeing those adjustments? And the answer was because I hadn't selected their face. I was still making adjustments in portrait, but I was making those adjustments to whoever's face was highlighted, not to the face that I wanted to adjust. So remember that. Select the right face when you're making the adjustment. All right, what does portrait allow you to do? Portrait allows you to make adjustments to the person's skin, to the person's eyes, and to the person's mouth. Let's do skin first. We want to turn on the skin adjustments by clicking in that little box. And now we have a series of adjustments we can make. We can change how it hides or shows blemishes, how it smooths the skin, how it minimizes or maximizes shine, the evenness of the color and brightness around the entire face, and what range it is applying all of these adjustments to. The feature that I like best and that I use most is smoothing. If I drag smoothing all the way to its maximum, you can see what's happening to my face. But it is smoothing out any details. And when I take smoothing completely away, it's giving me the maximum number of detail. So if you're looking to make your skin look a little smoother, smoothing is the tool that you ought to go to. Next is eyes. We click on eyes. The app is going to ask, where are your eyes? You can see down over here, it says click on the corner, on the center of each eye. So we click once, and it puts a little blue dot there, and we click again, and it draws a little map around each of the eyes. Now at this point, it's worthwhile zooming in. So we're going to zoom on in on the eyes. Now, Monica, you see in the upper right-hand corner the box that appeared, and if I move this box around, I can now move around on the screen. So I am zooming in on the eyes. If the little map around the eyes disappears, if you come back over here and you just click on the little eye, it reappears. And the reason I want it to reappear is it does a decent job of identifying the contours of the eye, but it doesn't do a perfect job. So I like to grab each of these little handles and bring them in so that I'm sure that it's adjusting just the eye and that it's not adjusting the eyelid or where your nose piece is or on eyeglasses or anything like that. All right, we move on in. Now, eyes have the ability to whiten your eyes, and it has the ability to put more detail into the eye itself. Here, if I turn the detail off, you can see that the blue-gray area of my eyes didn't become as sharp. The more I draw this up, the more sharp and detailed it gets kind of eerie pretty fast. So I just like to just move the detail up slightly. On whitening, it only will adjust the whites in the eye. And if I increase the whiteness, you can see it's increased. And if I decrease it, it's decreased. And you can adjust this to your heart's content. I will warn you, like any other special effect, if you overdo it, it will look weird in the final result. But here, if I've adjusted the eyes, I can see what it looks like before and after just by turning that effect on and off and back on again.
Okay, can you do one eye versus the other?
No, I don't think you can. I think it's both eyes at the same time. I have never, well, I wonder what would happen if you clicked on one eye twice and had that contour around the one eye and then made the adjustments. Obviously, it's not going to adjust the other eye if there's no contour around it. So maybe it's possible to do it that way. Any other questions? Okay, we go to the mouth. Mouth. And now it's going to ask you to click on the sides of the mouth. So we click on one side of the mouth and we click on the other side of the mouth, and it gives you 4 lines. The bottom line is for the bottom of your bottom lip. The second line that I drag down is for just below your teeth. And then this guy is for just above your teeth. And this guy is for the top of your top lip. This blue line here allows you to drag all 4 around, but that's the 4 lines. And now if I come over, I can whiten my teeth if I so choose. The vibrance is how red, how vibrant the lips are. You can see, especially on the bottom lip, when I go from no vibrance to total vibrance, it looks like I'm wearing lipstick. But vibrance is the adjustments for the lips. So, mouth off, mouth on, mouth off, mouth on. If I want to see all of those adjustments at once, I can then, let's see, I go fit. And now if I come up to here, which was my master portrait control, and I turn that off, that is the before, and that is the after. My skin is slightly smoother, my eyes are slightly wider, and my teeth are slightly wider. That is the portrait module. Any questions about the portrait module? Okay, now I am going to show you two other adjustments that you can make on your face that are not documented in ON1. The first one, excuse me, the first one is on the retouch tool. It does not matter which module you're in when you're doing this next step, because on the side here is the retouch tool. What is the retouch tool? Well, we mentioned last week that the retouch tool has 3 buttons on the top. The button on the left, which is called Perfect Eraser, is exactly the same as the spot healing brush that's in Photoshop Elements. And if you paint over something, it will completely erase it and replace it as best it can with its artificial intelligence. The one on the other side is the clone stamp tool, and it's exactly the same as the clone stamp tool that is in Elements. Right? The problem with the Perfect Eraser is that it is too strong when you're trying to make adjustments on a face. I'll show you what I mean. Let's say I want to improve, reduce this smile line or wrinkles in your skin. If I use this Perfect Erase tool and I want to size it a little bit bigger than what I want to affect, and if I paint over that, it eliminates it completely, which is kind of weird. It does not look natural. So I'm going to undo what I just did. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to just make that adjustment a little bit? And the answer is yes, you can do that. And that's what this little tool in the middle, which is called the retouch brush. It's exactly the same as the Perfect Eraser brush, except you can change how much the tool is feathered and how opaque the tool is. Remember, 100% opacity means you can't see through it and it's on full effect. If you reduce the opacity, then it's only a partial effect. Like when we were putting effects onto our photos, if we didn't want the full effect on the photo, we only wanted part of the effect, we came over to the opacity slider and we could reduce the opacity on the color adjustment or on the dynamic contrast, and we could reduce the effect on wherever you just applied it. So in this particular case, I've got a reasonable feather. My feather is 40%, so it's a very soft brush. And I've reduced my opacity to somewhere in the 30s. It's not critical, but somewhere in the 30s seems to work well. Now, if I come down to that smile line and I paint it, it has just reduced the smile line. You can still see it, but it's not nearly as prominent as it was before. And you can do this on smile lines, frown lines, crow's feet by your eyes, wrinkles on your skin. You can do this on lines on your neck. Here, there's a line on my neck over here. I could do that and it reduces it and it reduces it, but you could still see the texture of the skin below it because the opacity is only, in this case, 36%. If you think that the effect wasn't strong enough, you can do it again. Now remember, wherever you do it, make sure you do it on both sides if you have that problem on both sides. So now I've reduced those smile lines on both sides by using this tool in the middle, the retouch brush, with a soft brush using feathering and reducing the opacity so that you can still see what's below it and the adjustment looks natural. Questions? No. Okay, good, good. All right, the last adjustment, you need to be in local. So I am coming over to the right-hand side and I click on local. And so local, I am going to make sure that my exposure is at 0. And remember, you can adjust all of these to 0 just by clicking on the word and the slider will go back to 0. The tool that we're going to use in local is all the way at the bottom, called Paint with Color. What I want to do is I want to reduce or eliminate that shiny spot on my nose and the shiny spot on my cheek. But how do I do that without adjusting everything else? It's quite difficult, but not when you paint with colors. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select Paint with Color. And now I am going to select what color I want to paint with. So I hit the dropper. I come over to my nose and I say, I want that area to not be the white area, but I want it to be near the white area, right over there. Whoop. Let's try that again. I don't know why it went to black, but there we go. All right. So now you see in the box here, the color that I've selected is the color right next to that white area. Now, by using Paint with Color, I have exactly the same flexibility that I had with the other retouch tool, where I can adjust the feathering and I could adjust the opacity. Once again, I don't want the opacity to be 100% because then the paint will be pure, not see-through, and it'll look weird. But if I reduce the opacity down to somewhere in the 30s, and I reduce the size of my paintbrush so that it's just a little bit bigger than the shiny spot on my nose, and I click on the shiny spot on my nose, you can see it just did a pretty good job of reducing the shine. Probably if I click on it again, it's eliminated the shine completely. All right. I can do the same thing on my cheek. I will come down to my Paint with Color, select the dropper. I want the color to be this color. And then I already have the feather set okay. I have the opacity set okay. And now I will paint over this bright area, that shiny area, and I let go. And that shiny area is barely noticeable. If I do it a second time, that shiny area is virtually gone completely. And yet, because the opacity is only at 32%, it's still doing a good job of allowing the texture of my skin at that point to still show through. Any questions? Any questions about anything I just showed you in ON1 or in Elements? Because, yes,
Jay, on the bottom of that screen where you had the paint with color, it has a mode called solid paint. What
yes.
are the other modes and what do they do?
I don't know what Classic does. I would have to research that. But I was wondering one day what to do, how to replace a color. And what I found was that it's a little bit of a complicated process. But in order to replace a color, what you need to do, if you recall last week, we selected a color range and we selected the yellow flowers. And so we could only adjust the yellow flowers because we restricted it to that. If I select a color range, once the color range is selected, then if I go down here to paint with color and I've selected replace the color, I can put a different color into this box, and whatever I selected up in the color range, it'll change that color to this color. I don't know if that was clear or not, but that's what replace color does. And again, I don't know what Classic does. Any other questions?
So is all those changes you made now one new layer?
All of those that I made is one new, well, it's actually two layers, because this layer where I painted is in the local, which is a layer, and where I selected portrait is actually another layer. Effects can be layers one on top of the other. And so all of those are on the original photo, and you can remove them. If I click on this, I don't like any of the portrait adjustments I made, I can click on this little X and remove the portrait layer completely. It will still retain the local adjustments because that's a different layer. So the adjustment on the shine on my nose or on my cheek will remain. And likewise, if I go to local and I click on this X to eliminate that adjustment, the shine will reappear. There's the shine back, but the portrait adjustments still are there. And as we know from using ON1, when I finally export the photo, or if I use the plugin and I went back to Photoshop Elements, it does not change the original photo. The original photo is there. If we do export, we will say where we want it to go. And if it's in the same subdirectory, it will tack on copy onto the end of the name of the file. So you do not write over the original photo. And if you're in Elements and you click on Save As, remember to save it as a different file name so that it doesn't overwrite the original photo. Because as far as Elements knows, you're still working on the original photo and you want to save the changes to that same file name. You'll need to physically change the file name in order to avoid writing over the original file. All right, any other questions? No? Okay, we are then done with this session. Have fun adjusting yours or anybody else's faces. If you don't tell them, they won't be offended. And please practice your masking techniques, because next week when we talk about layers, trust me, all of those techniques will be good to know. Okay, folks,
Jay, thank you.
you're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
Okay, take care. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.